Shalom. I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushua, Bahashim, the Chakadash. Give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who have the truth love through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushua. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahushua is the word ignorant we call Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahushua. Pretty much I saw a video that was done on General Yohana, and this ain't nothing new because he already said it years ago. He said that he wants to establish his version of the kingdom of heaven within America, which is Babylon the Great, which is a sellout, defeated mindset. That's not a man of the world mindset because one of the things you understand being in this truth is the curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. And it doesn't allow us, no matter where you are in the world, to be sovereign and independent unless you worship the God of this world, which is Satan and his physical counterpart, so-called white man, and Selah. All right. Now, if you become successful in this world, you're gonna have to worship Satan one way or another. You're gonna have to worship Mammon. All right. You're gonna have to do things in order to keep your worldly possessions. You might have to, sacrifice your family members, friends, co-workers, so forth and so on. And this will be an ongoing thing, you know. So the only way we're gonna be liberated is by Yahawashi. So I typed in reparations, AIOU. It says reparations are measures to redress past wrongs. It says especially systematic human rights violations like slavery or colonization. So you gotta understand, if they was to give every Israelite, you know, reparations money, that will cause an economic collapse. That will cause a global economic collapse. There's no way that they could ever give us any form of money, a check, or any form of worldly possessions that would make up for the great robbery, murder, the identity theft, stealing our land, just going against the Lord, blaspheming the Lord, his son, the angels, the Israelites. There's nothing that they can do to make up for that. All right. So let's go down here. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. So when you come into this truth, and if you got common sense, you would understand that reparations is not possible. All right. Our people, they've been wanting reparations for years. The 40 acres and a mule, right? But even concerning their story, when they actually did get these things, it was taken from them through the so-called white man's deception, through documentation, through treaties, broken promises. All right. But you gotta understand, even when our people try to segregate themselves and liberate themselves, which you going off if you're trying to liberate yourself. Because Yahawashi, he's the redeemer, he's the liberator for the nation of Israel, beginning with elect. But you know, anytime our people had segregated, places like Black Wall Street too, those things were eventually destroyed. Why? Because Yahawashi, he's the redeemer. He's the one that's going to make us sovereign and independent. We can't make ourselves sovereign and independent. We're saying in Deuteronomy 28. So let's get into it. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and 15. I'll bounce around quick. It says, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy God. Now, when you see the word Lord in caps, it's talking about the God of Israel, Yahweh, who's the voice of the Lord thy God. Read Luke chapter 1, verse 7. He's talking about the prophets. The Lord always had prophets from the days of the Garden of Eden all the way up until right now, Babylon the Great. The 10 toes, the revival of the empire. The Lord always had prophets on the planet Earth. All right? So that's the voice of the Lord thy God, his messengers, his prophets. This is to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, meaning that I command you today, meaning that it still stands, but you know, we're sinners going back to repentance through the blood and sacrifice of Yahawashi. So as long as you have faith upon Yahawashi as an Israelite that's coming from the 12 tribes of Israel, then the Most High, He applies mercy on you. He applies grace. He doesn't hold you to that old covenant standard that He knows you can't keep in sinful flesh. That's why St. John 3:16 says what it says. You can make that up with Acts 5:31. For the Most High so loved the world of Israel, right? Specific arrangement of people. Going back to the Greek word cosmos for the word world in St. John 3:16. Let's talk about a specific arrangement of people because it was prophesied at Matthew 1:21 that Yahushua will be born to save his people. So if he's a Judite, who will be his people? The 12 tribes of Israel, the seed of the promise, right? So it says to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, right? That all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So these curses came upon us and overtake us because we was following the way to heathen. That's why all these different slave trades took place. Not just the transatlantic slave trade. It wasn't just one slave trade, it was a bunch. Indian Ocean slave trade, Dutch, British, Liberian, French, transatlantic. If I didn't already say it already, Indian Ocean slave trade, sub-Saharan. We had a bunch of slave trades that they don't even talk about in school. You had the Chinese, the Japanese, everybody had a hand in slavery, right? So these persons, they overtook us, which will cause us to suffer economically no matter where we're at, right? And that's what these first couple of curses go into. It goes into our hellish living conditions of the planet Earth. Let's read the next one. 48. It says, therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies. Who was our enemies? The 17 heathen nations, which the Lord Yahweh shall send against thee in hunger. You hungry? You want to go to a restaurant? You want to go on a date with your girl? You want to buy food in particular? You ain't growing your own food. You got to go to your enemy for that. And the thirst, water, liquor, you got to go to your enemy for that. And the nakedness, clothing, right? People, they like prestige clothing, right? You like the Gucci, you like the Louis Vuitton, or whatever the fuck you like. You got to go to your enemy for that. You're not making your own stuff. You're not really making your own fabric. You got to go to your enemies for absolutely everything, right? So you're not solving the independent. It don't even matter if you're a millionaire or you're a billionaire or a guy with status in this world. You know, you spending, first of all, you're under your enemy's money system. You're under the centralized system. No matter if you're in America, Africa, anywhere in the world, there's a central bank there, meaning that they have control over your life because they control the money supply. Referring to the central bankers, which are the Rothschilds and the different Jewish families with the different aliases, but they like to hide their identity. All right. So you're not sovereign or independent, no matter what you do. You want to get a plot of land, you're gonna have to, pay a tax for that, and ultimately they could take that land from you at any time. Continuing on. So we're not sovereign or independent. Even if you sell out, you're not sovereign or independent. You want to get a nice car, you want to get a Maybach, you want to get a Rolls Royce Phantom, you want to get a fast sports car. You ain't trade the car, so you just it's like a system. You pay for something, you giving your enemies their money back by buying their stuff. You're in a constant loophole. It says, and then the one of all things. So no matter what it is, from the smallest things to the biggest things, you want a job, you work, pay taxes, you want a nice car, anything you want, you have to pay for it. Even coming into the world, it costs money, right? Your women give birth, you got to go to the hospital, everything costs money. You got to go to your enemies for the one of all things, right? It says that he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. So that's what's going on. And that physically happened. They put the shackles on us, the iron shackles. So now let's go down here. So we're not sovereign and independent. So who's going to liberate us? Because our people, they had civil rights. They had the Black Panther Party. They had Black Wall Street 1 and 2. They had a lot of slave rebellions. That didn't get our people nowhere. All right. They back where they started. So this is Deuteronomy 28:68. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Egypt is right next to Israel. You could walk down there, right? Egypt is referring to Revelation 11:8. It's America, the great city. So the Lord is saying what? If you read Exodus, I believe it's 22, where Egypt or Mizraim, which if I'm not mistaken, it means house of bondage or like double straits, right? So the Lord is saying, I'm going to bring you into Egypt again with ships, right? The cargo slave ships. And yes, the cargo slave ships, they existed. The Lord is saying, what? I'm going to bring you into captivity. I'm going to bring you into slavery again, but this time by the way of ships. It's not talking about physical Egypt. Egypt is right there. It says, by the way whereof I speak unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. You know what? You're not going to be sovereign and independent. You're not going to have control of your land, right? You're not going to have control over your possessions, your resources. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies, right? The heathen nations, all the slave trades that took place for bondmen and bondwomen, slave men and slave women, captives, right? And no man shall buy you, neither what? No man shall redeem you. No man is not going to be able to liberate or make you sovereign and independent, no matter how great or eloquent of a speaker he is or a leader he is, or what his status is. He's subject to these curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. So now let's go here. This is Zephaniah 3 and 8. And excuse me for my voice, I got a little cold. It says, therefore wait ye upon me, saith the Lord. Right? So this is what the Lord is saying to the true believers. Right? The true believers is the elect of the nation of Israel. The ones predestinated unto salvation. It says, saith the Lord unto the dead that I rise up to the prey. Our people, they had a whole bunch of slave rebellions. They rebel now on a low level. All right. They're not doing that in the unified level, right? But they tried to rebel and that don't get them nowhere. Because that's not how the Lord set it up. He set it up for Yahawashi to be the liberator, right? So the Lord is saying have faith and wait, have patience, wait until these prophecies come to pass. Wait until the Lord rise up to the prey through Yahawashi, through these different current events in the form of Bible prophecy. For my determination is to gather the nations that I may assemble the kingdom. This is talking about World War III, to pour upon them my indignation and all my fierce anger. Because World War III is going to be a nuclear war, right? For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. According to what? The nuclear missiles, the nuclear destruction, but also the concentrated heavily fire from the laser beams from the chariots of Israel, so-called UFOs or UAPs, or whatever the hell they call them, that Atlas, whatever the so-called white man with his weird ass names. The scriptures identify as the chariots of Israel, how Yahawashi was resurrected, and how we're going to receive salvation. The vehicles that the angels use to travel, as well as the Most High, the Messiah, and how he's coming back, right? So that's what we got to do. So let's read this. So Yahawashi, he's going to make us sovereign and independent, not no mortal men. This is Isaiah 14 and 1. And then they later trying to tell you that they already lost the battle. They got you can't beat them, join them mindset. You shouldn't be following individuals that's not proclaiming or pushing the agenda of having faith upon Yahawashi, having patience, waiting on these prophecies to come to pass, understanding being in the truth and of long suffering. You have to be your cross, right? Isaiah 14 and 1, for the Lord will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel as we the chosen nation and set them in their own land. So it's going to be Yahweh through Yahawashi that's going to physically liberate us and make us sovereign and independent by putting us in our own land, not us doing it, not us getting plane tickets and going there, but Yahweh through Yahawashi doing it. It says, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. The strangers talking about the Israelite foreigners, the Israelites that's been scattered through the distant lands, right? And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. Talking about who? The heathen nations, right? And they shall take them captives who captives they were. This is going to be the reality of being in the kingdom of heaven. The 17 heathen nations, they're going to be slaves. Under that new covenant, the Israelites is always going to be on top. We're going to be the Lord. We're going to have an everlasting kingdom. How you gonna have an everlasting kingdom if the people that's governing that kingdom is not immortal? Then Yahawashi promised his 12 disciples and the believers immortality. That's why it's gonna be everlasting kingdom. Right? The heathen nations, they don't have that privilege of being changed, stepping into the new covenant. They always going to be in the flesh. They were designed and programmed to be slaves. The only reason why they was allowed to conquer us is because we broke the old covenant, which is the law, statutes, and commandments. All right. So it says they shall rule over their oppressors. So Yahweh is coming to make us sovereign and independent, and to give us the power to take down our enemies. We don't have power to do that because we're under the curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28. So when you read Revelation 20:23, all right, ain't gonna be no more curse from the point of us receiving salvation and in the kingdom of heaven, period. The Israelites, all right, that step into that new covenant. So it says, and it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, right? And from thy fear and from thy hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve. So we gotta wait upon Yahweh. To finish it off with this, Obadiah 1:17. It says, but upon Mount Zion, right Zion, the Lord's monument on earth, shall be deliverance. For salvation is strictly only for the elect of the nation of Israel. It's a specific gospel and doctrine we got to follow in order to be made wise unto salvation. And there shall be holiness. Why? Because we're going to step into the new covenant, which involves perfection, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. So when the Yahushua comes back, then we will possess our possession. Then we will be set in our own land. Then we'll be sovereign and independent. But for right now, even if you sell out, you want to be a hireling, you want to 501c3 charter, you're Masonic, you're just a sellout on whatever category the Lord predestinated, your life. You can't be sovereign and independent under a centralized system. It don't matter what country you're in, it don't matter what language you speak, how you look, your genetics. If your country's under a centralized system, you are not sovereign and independent. And as long as you're an Israelite, you're going to be going through these curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28 until Yahweh physically returns back. And if you're not a part of the elect, you're going to end up being destroyed anyway. And when you come back, you're going to be born into the new covenant. All right? So, Lord willing, we was edified. Shalom.